It's me again, Thelma. Welcome back to my Reminiscing with ReNEE playlist. So today I will be talking about the 5 stages of grief, and particularly the 2 stages of grief that I'm currently going through with the most recent passing of my neighbors on my block. So I want to give a little bit of background information about the death that's been all around me. A month or so ago, one of my neighbors from across the street was in a really bad car accident. She was in a car, and the driver of the car lost control of the car, and the car sped off the road into like a wooded area, and she flew out of the car. So this particular neighbor, she was only, I think, between 18 or 20 years old, and she had a 3-year-old daughter. However, it was devastating. It was tragic. It was the family was on their way on to a trip, and this accident happened. So I just remember feeling really down when I heard the news, and one day they actually blocked our block off, and a lot of people was on the block, and they were letting go of balloons, and they had sad music playing. And I just remember I didn't go outside, but I was in my window, and I just was looking out the window and just feeling really bad for the parent, feeling really bad for the child who lost her mother. I just remember just the feeling of the heaviness of feeling sad. Now that was the first death, and that was about a few weeks ago, maybe like a month ago. The second death that I recently experienced was my next door neighbor. So I live in a twin house, and I have a next door neighbor who lives directly, our houses are connected. So I've been on the block for about 7 years, and she's been on the block for about 40 years. She grew up in the house. And I remember in the beginning, we really did not I wouldn't say get along, but we bumped heads a little bit because she likes to feed the neighborhood cats. So I don't know if there's anybody out here that have a cat lady on your block, or if you might be a cat lady, it can be a little bit of a difficult conversation. She promised to clean up behind the cats and for it not to be an issue. Of course, we still had flies in the summertime, and I still had, every once in a while, I had to chase cats off my porch. However, it's still my neighbor, and the Bible tells us to love our neighbors. So I still had to separate how I was feeling in reference to her love for the cats and how they were just interrupting our life, and be considerate of her needs. When my neighbor right next door passed away, I was like, okay, now this is 2 deaths on my block within a week's or so time, a couple weeks time. So I remember waking up Sunday morning, just like, okay, I got to get my Sunday morning started. And I saw an ambulance outside, and I'm thinking, well, what's that all about? So it was a rainy, gray day. I look out the window. I don't see much but the ambulance, so I didn't think nothing of it. About 15 minutes later, the ambulance left, but now I see a cop car outside. So now I'm thinking, something must really be going on. What could it possibly be? So I look out the window, and I see the neighbors next door crying. I see the wife out there. I see the children out there. I don't really know what's going on just yet. I was actually on my way out to go to the supermarket, so I figured let me go outside and just see what's going on. So as I go out the door, I see... Sorry, I'm getting... see the police, about 6 of them, taking out my neighbor's body out of the house. And I just really lost it. I broke down, and I went and I started hugging the daughter, and then I went next door looking for the wife because I found out it was her husband that had passed away. And it's still really hard to even talk about. So I feel like I may have been already going through this grief, these stages, from the first 2 deaths. But the third death is just really hard for me to cope with. I'm sorry, I'm gonna pause just to get myself together. Neighbor to the left side of me, when she got home, she works overnight, and when she got home from work that morning, she found her husband in the house in bed, and he was not responsive. So she called the paramedics, and when they came out, they pronounced him dead, and they said that there was nothing they can do. So he was only 39 years old. We just saw him the night before out on his porch, so you know, it was just really sudden, just like the other two deaths were as well. And it just hit really close to home. For one, I have definitely have a relationship with my neighbors to my left. Like I said, you got to be neighborly to everybody. You should love your neighbors. But you know, some neighbors you may talk to more than once. These particular neighbors, me and my husband went on double dates with them in the past. We went to cookouts with them. We shared food back and forth. You know, they were close in our age. Our kids are close in age, so we were pretty connected. In saying all this, I wanted to go over the 5 stages of grief and maybe to see if there's anything that anybody has that they can share with me to help me cope right now with these deaths. So I'm back. I had to take a few minutes to just try to get myself together because this is just really an emotional day for me. It's been an emotional week so far for me, but I just wanted to get it together so I could get through this video. So the 5 stages of grief are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. When that person is just in denial of what happened, they still trying to cope with the reality of everything, and they just not seeing things for what they really are. When the person is angry with everyone around them, they're angry with the deceased person that left them behind, and they just show a lot of expression of anger, why it happened and when it happened, and what if this would have happened would have been different. And just a little bit of that. I feel like I was in that stage of that with my current next door neighbor, just because she was at work and he was home, and I'm like, well, what if she would have got home a little earlier, or maybe if this would have happened. So you know, that bargaining stage of grief is just trying to, it's still a coping mechanism, and it's a defense mechanism to try to figure out how things could have been better or different. So the depression phase of grief, it's just being down, not being your normal self. I feel like, honestly, with all 3 deaths on my block, the depression stages of grief is where I've been stuck, and where I feel like I am currently, because I just haven't been myself, and I was just trying to get back to a happy space and just get back to just my normal happy being. And I'm like, what's wrong, Thelma? Like, why you're like this? Is acceptance. So just accepting that this person will no longer be here, accepting that it happened, and trying to move past it some kind of way. Doesn't mean you're actually over the grief or over the person passing away, but you just accept the fact that they're no longer here. You would think, you know, if it wasn't my immediate family, it wasn't somebody that lived in my household, but it just affected me just as much, because I see these people every day. And we've been in quarantine, mind you, with this whole corona situation. We've shared food across houses, we've talked. Everybody's been going through this whole stuck in the house, when everything was going on with the looting and all the stores being broken into. We were all conversating about that. So these are people that I see on a day-to-day basis. This is a person that's always outside, that's always talking to everybody, that's always bubbly. So when I seen them bring him out of the house in a bag, I mean, like I said, it was definitely an out-of-body experience. And I didn't even realize how I was going to act in that moment, or what to say in that moment. So with that being said, you know, however way, whichever stage, however you need to grieve, just grieve. And I ask you to continue to keep me uplifted in your prayers. So as I grieve through this, as I have to go to another funeral, and I've lost 3 people that live in close proximity to my house and that I see on a day-to-day basis. Quote from today is from Earl Goldman, and it reads as follows: grief is not a disorder. It is not a disease or a sign of weakness. It is an emotional, physical, and spiritual necessity the price you pay for love. The only cure for grief is to grieve. I'm preaching to the choir that it's okay to grieve. It's okay to go through stages of grief. It's okay to not be okay. It's okay to cleanse yourself and let out how you feel, so that you're not bottled up inside and so that you're not holding on to anything inside. I ask that we continue to keep this family in prayer, keep all the families in prayer who recently lost someone that they loved, lost someone that was close to them. Thank you so much for watching today. I thank you in advance for keeping me and my family in your prayers. And I ask that you just continue to have a blessed week. Thanks for coming.